This actually happened to me when I was going to my first year of uni. And that's where I realized that the kind of friendship that I had was a toxic friendship.
Have you ever felt anxious when someone doesn't respond to your text message right away?
I think it depends on relationships for me.
I would actually say that yes. I think when we say fast, I think it should be the thing that is pulling you away from having that intimate connection with God, right?
Our phones feed a certain part of what this physical body needs.
Looking at it from the angle of how that expectation of constant feedback impacts our ability to wait on God.
We live in a world where instant gratification is the norm.
How do you think Jesus would handle smartphones and social media if he were walking the earth today?
I think there's so many things, but one thing really comes to mind is that.
Welcome back to another episode of Living the Sermon podcast, where we dive into meaningful conversations about our faith, relationships, and personal growth. I'm your host, Daniel Laryea, and I'm delighted to have you join us. In our episode today, we'll be discussing the challenges of maintaining digital boundaries while staying connected to God. You would agree with me that we are in a world where people are hyper connected, especially our Gen Zs. They have this constant pressure of wanting to always be available through text messages, social media, and calls. And sometimes this can strain relationships and also impact our spiritual life negatively. I've invited Gen Zs, they are young but brilliant, who will be sharing with us God-centered practical ways by which we can maintain digital boundaries to strengthen rather than weaken our relationships with one another, as well as our relationship with God. Welcome, Mami Krama.
Thank you. I'm excited to be on another episode. So I can't wait to have this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for making it.
Yeah.
Welcome, Brother William.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Let me start with you, Brother William. If your phone could talk, what would it complain about, especially as it pertains to your digital habits?
I think my phone would definitely say that I'm always looking at him too much.
What kind of phone do you use?
I have an iPhone 14.
iPhone 14.
Yeah.
Why do you look at it so much?
Well, I think just with the nature of what I have to do on a day-to-day basis pertaining to like school, I use it to, log into my school accounts. And especially since I'll be going into college in the fall, I use it to access my calendar, access my school schedule and all of that stuff. And then as well as, using it for leisure activities, recreational time, stuff like that, listening to music, all types of things. So it's really something that I use on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so your phone will say you are using me too much. Is that it?
I'm looking at him too much.
You are looking
Staring
at him
the
too
screen
much. Oh, okay. I see. Mami Krama, how about yourself?
For me, I think my phone will complain about the battery because honestly, I use my phone for everything. I use it to connect with friends, to connect with family, sometimes work. I'm a big curious person, so like I could be I use it a lot for Google too. So if there's a question I need to ask, Google, like quickly search up things like that. So I would say my phone will definitely complain about its battery life. Yeah.
Just thinking about how much you use your phone, imagine that you want to embark on a digital Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
And what do I mean by digital Sabbath? I mean, like a regular period or a period where you intentionally decide that I'm going to stay away from my phone. You want to disconnect. If you want to embark on such a practice, what do you think would be some of the biggest challenges that you will go through?
That's a tough one. So I'll give scenarios because I'm going to speak on two challenges, and I think they pertain to they're different for those different scenarios. If I was to go on a digital Sabbath for like a day, right? I think the one thing that I would struggle with is discipline. If you're starting anything new, right? It's very hard to say I am going to do this from start to finish, right? let me even give fasting as an example. It's even hard. Like if your church says, let's fast from 6 to 6, that's the time that the clock will decide to go really, really slow, right? And so it takes discipline to say, okay, I'm going to start doing this and then end at this. And so for me, I think in that scenario, if it was to be like a day or something, discipline would be a very challenging part of that digital Sabbath for me. Now, let's say if I was to go on it for like 3 days, the challenge, that's where the consistency part comes in, right? For me, I'm that kind of person that if one day, second day, I'm in that constant routine type of activity, it's very hard for me to be consistent because I would easily get bored, and it would lead to me deviating from that path that I'm on, right? And so in those scenarios, those would be the challenges for me in going on like a digital Sabbath. And I mean, like, let's be honest, like our phone is with us like every single day, right?
That's right.
And so consistency and discipline is going to take a lot for you to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to go on this digital Sabbath, if it's like a day or 3. And I'm sure a lot of people would probably relate to what I'm saying, that consistency and discipline would be a really challenging part of going on such a path. Yeah.
Brother William, what do you think?
I would definitely say for me personally, right, in terms of going on if I were to go on a digital Sabbath, one thing that would definitely, I think I would definitely have a challenge with is the feeling of maybe isolation or feeling lonely, right? Because I think with the amount of information that our world gets even in a given minute or a given second, there's so much information that's always coming out, something new, that you always want to stay up to date on like the most relevant things that are happening in the world, right? And so in our modern world today, we have a term called FOMO, which is fear of missing out, right? I think that'd be something that's a really big thing that I would definitely encounter, saying, oh, what's happening? What's going on? What have I missed out on? So yeah, that's definitely a challenge that I would definitely encounter.
FOMO is real.
Yeah,
like,
FOMO is
I feel like
real.
even sometimes when I watch my nieces with their friends having conversations, and it's like, oh, have you heard this music before? Oh, have you watched this show before? Like even them, they feel,
and the term is what? FOMO,
fear of missing out.
Okay.
They feel that it's like, oh, like we don't watch this at home, and it prevents you from, let's say a group of people are having a kind of conversation. Like William was saying, you instantly feel isolated because it's like, you don't know what they're talking about. You don't know, like you haven't watched that video or you haven't seen this trend. And so it makes you look weird. And 2, it makes you feel isolated.
I think I've been going through FOMO myself because sometimes when you guys are talking and you start making fun of me because I don't understand the term. Okay, so I've been having FOMOs. On a more serious note, so now you get me thinking, if you have to fast, staying away from food and staying away from phone, which one do you think will be more difficult for you?
I would definitely say the phone fasting would be harder, I think, because I feel like when you're doing food fasting, right, you're able to kind of use your mind to say that, oh, I'm going to submit my mind to no food, right? I'm going to submit my body to no food. And I'm going to be focused on reading my scripture, praying during that period of fasting, right? But when it comes to phone fasting, right, you could say, I'm going to go and do phone fasting, right? And you're going to go, let's say you're going to go put your phone away and go and pray and read your Bible. You can be praying and you'll hear that WhatsApp ding. You can be praying, your eyes will be closed. You hear that WhatsApp ding, you open your eyes. Hey, let me go and check my WhatsApp. What's going on? See, so I think phone fasting would be so much more difficult than food fasting.
How about yourself?
Yeah, I definitely agree that the phone fasting would be the difficult one. The reason I say that is because, okay, let me use myself as an example. When I entered the workforce, right, one of the things that I've realized is even my eating pattern has changed, right? I could go like a whole day without food.
That's right. Yeah.
Because you're so occupied with work, right? I think into today, it's so much easier to like prevent yourself from eating, or maybe because you're occupied by other things and things like that. But with the phone, it's like constantly by your side, right? It's either emails, it's either family reaching out to you, it's either friends, or like William was saying, like maybe a notification from a social media platform, right? And so I definitely think that the phone fasting will be difficult. But I have a question. Who said fasting is only pertains to food?
To food.
Like where did that come from? Because I feel like it limits people from actually reaching their full spiritual potential. Because if we say food fasting, right, we're preventing our flesh from being so engrossed in this physical world, right? But we want to stay connected to God in terms of the spiritual part of things, or enriching our spiritual man, right? Our spirit man, sorry. If food is not the thing that is making me struggle, but it's like somebody takes away my phone and it's like, I don't know what to do. Isn't that also like a form of preventing yourself from being so dependent on the human flesh? So like, that's like who said food is just food fasting?
That's a good one. I think, let me have your take and then I'll also chime in. William.
Oh, I definitely think that's a very good question. Like, there's all types of like addictions in this world, right? So some people may be like addicted to screen time, and things like that. So I think when we say fast, I think it should be the thing that is pulling you like away from thing that is pulling you away from having that intimate connection with God, right? So if that's, let's say if that's your phone, you're always spending time on your phone, you're always looking at your phone, maybe that is the thing that you need to put aside and say, I'm going to make up my mind to take a break from this thing. I'm going to seek the face of God. And I think when we do that, God will definitely show up in ways that we didn't expect.
Before you come in, I know you're going to, hit the nail on the head, but I just wanted to add to what William was saying. When Jesus said that man shall not depend on bread alone, how I have come to understand it is that anything that feeds this human body, it's not necessarily just food. Our phones feed a certain part of what this physical body needs, right? Yeah. It could be, like we talked about, not feeling isolated, feeling connected to people, right? And so I feel like my understanding of that term bread is not just the food itself. Bread. Yeah. It's anything that this physical body is so dependent on that it draws you away from staying connected to God, if that makes sense.
That's right.
I agree.
I think I agree. First of all, I would say that especially in our present dispensation, right? And for most Gen Zs, phone fasting definitely is going to be very hard. Yeah. And when we read a book of Exodus 23, scripture says that we should not make any idols before him, right? Talking about idolatry, anything that your heart is innate, you cannot do without, can be an idol.
Yeah.
And it's also something that we also need to ask ourselves, is the phone becoming an idol for us? Can we do without it? And talking about fasting, generally, it's just abstaining from something, okay, generally. But commonly, we attribute that something to food. But individuals can also declare fast on themselves, right? Knowing too well that this is one thing that you dwell on, if it is the phone, that you are constantly engaged with, and you feel like, no, I need to put away this so I can focus on my God and have time to pray and engage with him spiritually so that you are not distracted, then obviously it's not even just food, but you can decide to declare fasting where you just disconnect. Okay, so it's not just, I wouldn't say the abstinence only pertains to food, but in our present age, there is something that really keep people going. And I like the example that you gave where, think about it, when we are working and you are so engrossed, busy, you don't think about food.
Yeah.
So sometimes, yes, you can fast, when it has to do with food, but fasting too is not just, staying away from food, but also spending time with God and reading the scriptures, right? And I do agree that you can stay away from food, reading the scriptures while still, searching or surfing the net, and you can be distracted.
Yeah.
So it's not just that anything that you know that your fleshy man depends heavily on,
Yeah.
staying away from it, such that you can focus on God, can also, be termed, it can be fasting.
Yeah. That's good.
So I do concur. And I have a quick one. What do you typically do when you wake up? You reach for your phone or you pray? And I know that there may be parents, there may be siblings, friends, and loved ones watching, but let's be authentic. If you don't know, just think about the past few days. What do you typically do when you wake up?
For me, is I definitely do reach for my phone first, but there are instances where the Holy Spirit will prompt me. Like you haven't even said thank you for life, and you're reaching for your phone, right? And in that moment, I think sometimes to like it's okay to like wake up and just say thank you, God. I think that's I used to feel guilty about just saying that sentence or that phrase, thank you, God, because I feel like we've made it into like you should pray for like 10 minutes. That's what works. I'm not saying that's bad. That's what works for other people, right? But for me, I think sometimes overthinking it and saying, okay, I have to do this long prayer, that even prolongs even me just simply saying thank you, and then I just reach for my phone. And so one thing I've tried to get into the habit of doing is like once I wake up is just my first communication should be with God, right? Just even something as simple as saying good morning, Father, or thank you, Lord, for life. Yeah, but to your question, I would say definitely it's very normal for me to just reach for my phone first, especially if like your alarm goes off and you have to turn it off and you're already reaching for your phone, and the next thing you see are notifications if it's from work or it's from social media, and you just start scrolling, right? Yeah, for me, yeah, it's definitely reaching for my phone first, but I have learned and I'm still learning to try to get out of the habit of going for my phone first and just speaking to my Heavenly Father first.
How about yourself, William?
Yeah, I would definitely say reaching for my phone, it's a habit that I need to get out of. I think one of the things is because my ringtone is like one of my favorite gospel songs. So when I'm waking up and I hear that, I'm already reaching for my phone anyways to turn off my alarm, and then you'll be turning off your alarm, and then you'll see a notification pop up, and then before you realize, you've spent the first 10 minutes of your day just scrolling through notifications. But I think that I'm becoming more like becoming more aware and more conscious of, let me take a moment to thank God, and even for life, right? Like Ifia said, because it's not every morning, like tomorrow is never promised, right? So I think being able to wake up first and say, thank you, Lord, and thank you for even waking me up today before reaching for my phone is something a habit that I definitely need to work on cultivating more.
You know what I'm gathering from all of us? It looks like we spend a lot of time on our phones.
Yeah.
Even when we are studying, working, that's what I'm getting from both of you. How has this habit of being constantly, connected to our phones and social media and all that, how do you think that has impacted your relationship with God?
I would definitely say that because of the way our world is now, we're so used to having various inputs of like information, right? We're so used to having information coming in at us, whether it's we'll be sitting at our desk doing our work, we'll be listening to music, or we'll have the TV on in the background while we're doing something. We're so used to having that constant inflow of input, right? And I think that has really drawn us away from the promptings of the Holy Spirit and the promptings of God, right? Because many times it's when we turn off all those devices and we just are still, that's when God speaks the most, right?
Mm.
And there's so much loudness and things that go on with our devices and in our world. But if we're able to take a moment and just sit back and listen, sometimes God's voice is quiet, and that's what we have to listen for. So when we take out all of the noise, we take out all of the distractions, and we just sit still and we listen, that's when we hear God's voice the clearest, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. Mami Krama, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah. I feel like this question is very personal for everybody
That's
and very,
right.
Yeah.
very different for everybody.
Yeah.
And so for me, what I would say is that I used to put God in like the back burner of things, especially in like everyday life. And so in my mind, what I would do is I would say, okay, especially if I reach for my phone first, right? And I tend to feel that guilt of I haven't spent time with God. So I will do it in the evening. And so I go the whole day without even communicating or even reading my word or even a verse. Even, you know how we have these the Bible app, I've forgotten what it's called. The U version. The U version
the Daily
app.
Bread,
Yeah, the Daily Bread. And so it pops up when it like, even with that, like I just swipe and like don't even, if it's reading, I just like don't even, because of that guilt, right? And one thing I've come to realize is that when I do that and I say, okay, in the evening, I would spend my time with God, I don't even end up doing it because like I've put so many things in the day that I'm like, okay, I'm tired. I'll do it tomorrow. So what I realized was that once I pick my phone first, I will always say tomorrow. I'll read my word. But then tomorrow comes and it's like, you're not doing it. And so I realized that it was straining my relationship with God, right? Even if I wanted something, it was very difficult for me to even go to God and ask, or even if I wanted his opinion on something, it was very hard for me to do that. And this is not to say that this has anything to do with the character of God. Has to do with who we are as human beings, right? Especially when the Holy Spirit prompts you and convicts you that what you're doing, it's not helping you in any way, right? Mm-hmm. But then as human beings, it's so normal for us to say, even if you're convicted and you're prompted by the Spirit, because of that guilt, you feel like, oh, maybe the Father won't hear me and things like that. And so for me, that's one of the things that I realized was like reaching for my phone first and being so dependent on my phone really put a strain on my relationship with God. And so I've tried, it's still a struggle, but I try every day to at least prioritize God first, especially at the start of my day. I think that sets the tone for the rest of your day as well. Yeah.
Have you ever felt anxious when someone doesn't respond to your text message right away?
Anxious? No. I think it depends on relationships for me.
Okay.
It depends on the kinds of relationships I have with people. So to be honest, I don't feel anxious when somebody doesn't respond back to my text, unless it's like I said, relationship depending on the closeness of the person, or like, let's say I guess maybe a time that I'll get anxious would be maybe I did something to the person and then I'm apologizing, the person doesn't respond. That's where I start to get anxious, or like something is wrong with the person I care about and then like I'm not hearing a response. That's where I get anxious. But truly and honestly, I don't think I do feel any form of anxiety when people don't respond immediately to my text messages. Yeah.
William, how about yourself?
I would actually say that yes, that sometimes I do. And again, like if you said, depending on relationships, especially in some of my friends, right? If I'm texting one of my friends, right, and then let's say they don't respond, maybe I'll be like, oh, was it something I said, or was it did I say something that maybe offended them, or did I communicate in a way that made them feel a certain type of way, right? But I think one thing now I've come to realize is that I shouldn't really have to be anxious, because sometimes people have lives outside of like their phones, right? And so you never know the reason why the person on the other end is not responding. Maybe it might be they had to step away and go do something for their mom, or they had to go get groceries or something. So I think being able to realize that anxiety I shouldn't have to have that anxiety, and that's something that I should give to God in prayer, right? And I should say, God, please take this anxiety from me. I shouldn't have to be anxious about someone not responding, because I know that there's people also have other things outside of the phone, right? I think that's something that I've come to realize very strongly.
How about you? Do you feel anxious when people don't?
I like the way you answered it. It depends on the time. It depends on the time. If maybe my wife goes to work and I know she may not be feeling too well, or there is something that I'm checking up on her, or maybe she sent me a text that usually I'm very bad at it. I'm so bad at responding to text messages, because sometimes I have the phone and I'm not even checking it. And sometimes too, I open the phone and to the other party, it may appear, you know how some people read receipt?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, my mind is off.
Yeah. No, it's true.
I'm just holding it, but I'm thinking about something so different. So I know for sure I'm very bad at it. So sometimes in my case, when someone sends me a text message and I realize that it's time sensitive and I'm responding and I'm not getting any feedback, that gets me thinking that what's going on? Is this person okay? What's going on with this person?
That's fair.
You know, and there are times when I'm chatting with someone and it's back and forth, and all of a sudden the person just disappears. Ghost on me, like I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah.
For a moment, that gets me thinking as well. Is the person okay? Is everything okay?
Yeah.
You know, so those are some of the things that, you know, come to mind. But to the extent where I'm so disturbed, I think I've encountered that too before. Reaching home from work, being at work and calling home just to make sure, especially when, you know, one of the kids is not feeling well, you just want to know what's going on. Yes, so sometimes it happens. But back to you, has somebody been upset with you for not responding in time and on time? Not, I wouldn't say upset, but kind of you could see the person is not too happy because they wanted you to respond and complain about you not responding when they send you a message or something.
Yeah. I think this actually happened to me when I was going to my first year of uni. And that's where I realized that the kind of friendship that I had was a toxic friendship. And the reason I say that is because we had a relationship where, like, we were always checking in on each other. Like, we're best friends, right? We're always checking in on each other and things like that. But high school is different from university. That's one thing I learned, like, in the first week.
William,
I'm taking notes.
You have to start taking notes.
Yes.
All right.
That's the first thing I realized when I went to uni. And it caused like a strain in my friendship. And I think in that first week we stopped talking because we literally stopped talking because it wasn't like it was intentional. Like, I was that kind of person. Like, our relationship was such that every time she texts, I would text back. I text, she would text. Even if she doesn't respond on time, right? Like, I would understand. But like, for her, it's like, why are you not, you know what I mean? Why are you not responding to me at this time? But then it got even worse when I went to uni, where in the first week, you know, it's orientation, you have other activities, like you have roommates, at least getting to know them, trying to build relationships and things like that. And in that first week, like, I wasn't consistent with messaging. And the next message I got was, well, I can see that you've moved on in life, and you're not, I guess I'm not a priority anymore. And so I don't know if this friendship can go on. And to be very honest.
Did you say this is a lady?
Yes.
Sounds like a guy.
No. This is not a guy.
Okay.
I feel like I feel like guys are different in certain things that women are.
Yeah.
And so, honestly, when that message came, a part of me felt a sense of relief because I felt like I was the one always carrying the friendship. And so, I guess it's just yes, I've had somebody get upset with me because I haven't responded to. And honestly, when the message came, I was like, okay, I mean, let's move on with life. Like, I was so done with it. I was so tired of having to always apologize and things like that, like always having to carry the friendship. And so I was like, you know what?
Let it go.
Let it go. Exactly. Yeah.
Now, let's explore some of the reasons why the person would feel anxious or feel that way to the extent of, getting upset.
I think it's because it's a pattern. Like, when you're in a constant, like, it's always, okay, this is always done like this. And so the minute something comes in and switches things up, it's like, oh, you've changed. Or I'm like, yes, obviously I'm going to change. I'm a human being. If you're not changing as a human being, but I felt like I was entering a different phase in my life. Like I said, high school and university are completely different things, right? Like, I have friends from high school, like we check in once in a while, right? But we understand that, like, we've charted separate paths for ourselves. And obviously, in every chapter that you go into, you form new relationships and things like that. I'm not saying, like, forget about your old relationships, but life happens, right? And so I felt like because it was we were friends for a very long time. It was because it was such a, like, always, okay, you send a message, I respond, this and this and that. And because we were in different time zones as well.
Oh, wow.
We were in different time zones. So we knew, okay, at this time she's awake, at this time I'm about to go to bed and things like that. And so, I felt like because it was a constant routine thing, that's why it was,
And bringing it back in perspective, right? Looking at it from the angle of how that expectation of constant feedback impacts our ability to wait on God. We are, in a dispensation where this constant communication, you test, I respond, you test, I respond. Do you think that it's also impacted people's our ability to really speak to God and give God some time to respond? Do you think that in any way has affected our prayer life, where we are praying to God and, just giving time for us to receive his feedback?
I would definitely say yes, because we live in a world where instant gratification is the norm, where we live in a generation where, for example, let's say you want to get groceries or you want to get food. You just tap a few buttons on DoorDash, your food's here in 15 minutes. So in terms of relating that back to our spiritual lives, sometimes we can get to a point where we go to God in prayer and we said, oh God, I need this, I need a new car, I need this, that. Can you please bless me now? But I think we definitely have to cultivate a spirit of patience, right? Because I believe that when we're patient and when we allow ourselves to wait on God, that's when God does mighty moves. And I definitely think that we shouldn't allow ourselves to be the type of people where we just want things when we want it and how we want it. Because God is a God of order. He's a God of doing things. He knows exactly when the right time is for things.
That's right.
Bible says in Jeremiah 29:11 that for he knows the plans that he has for us, right? Mm-hmm. And so God knows what we need when we need it, and he knows what we don't need and when we don't need it. So we should definitely allow ourselves to cultivate that spirit of patience and allowing God to move in his own way.
Can I add to
Sure.
to that point? I agree with everything that William said. I think also one thing I've come to learn is that human relationships are very different from our relationship, like the kind of relationship we have with God, right? And sometimes I know there is some instances where you're praying for something. Sometimes it's so hard to wait because But I think one thing I've come to learn is that if you have a relationship with God and you truly know God, right, you would understand that certain things are done at certain times, right?
That's right.
I feel like sometimes in this generation, especially when you're born into a Christian home, it's so easy to say, I know of God, but do you know God for your, like that? Do you have that relationship, right? And so sometimes that lack of relationship, we feel like, well, because our parents know God, when we go to God and we ask for things, he should, be ready and willing to just give it to us at this point in time, when in our time, right? But I think, to answer that question, like I think this generation, or even people, because we feel like we need this instant feedback, sometimes it's because we feel like we deserve it, or
we're entitled to it.
Yeah, that's the word. We're so entitled to it that, especially like if you're born in a Christian home, like, well, I'm born in a Christian home, so if this is my God, this is so yeah.
How do you think Jesus would handle smartphones and social media if he were walking the earth today?
I think there's so many things, but one thing really comes to mind is that he would want to use it with intentionality and with purpose. Nowadays there's so many different types of agendas going on in social media. People are using social media to push their own beliefs and ideologies, right, and agendas. But I think one thing that he would really want to do is to champion the kingdom agenda. I would definitely use this verse as an example, Luke chapter 5, verse 11, when Jesus was going out to preach, and he asked Peter to use his boat. When that specific instance, when Jesus asked Peter to use his boat, he didn't do that just because he wanted to sit in a boat. He did that specifically so that he could reach the masses, reach the audience, right?
That's right.
And after that, he told Peter to take that same boat and to go deeper, to cast his net into the water. So I think that he would definitely want to use social media in a way where you're targeting the audience, targeting specific masses, right? Targeting the homeless, targeting the hungry, those who are in need, both physically and spiritually, right? And I definitely think that he would want to push that agenda of being kingdom-minded.
What do you think about that question, Mami Kroma?
Yeah, I think if Jesus was to use social media in our day and age, I think one of the principles he'll teach us is balance. And the reason I say balance is because when Jesus came, because he came in the human form, right? He understood our struggles, like because he understood the struggles that man was going through. And this is not to say that when before he came, he didn't. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, like, it's very different when you're in the shoes of somebody else, right? And so I think he would teach us that, yes, this is a great tool to have and things like that, but do not let that be the entirety of your life, right? There's more to it than just having to do social media all the time, right? He would teach us to strike a balance. Like,
that's right.
Most importantly, your priority should be building that relationship with God, right? What is the goal? The goal is to make it to heaven, right? The goal is to not continue to live in our sinful nature, right? So if there's anything that would lead you to wanting to continue to live in that, I think sometimes when you lack that balance, it's so easy to most of the time go the negative way, right? And so I think Jesus would definitely teach us a good sense of balance of using social media, but also prioritizing the things of God. Yeah,
that's great. And I just like both answers where he was talking about intentionality and purpose, and also you talking about balance. And definitely, I would. None of you mentioned that he was gonna shun it or shy away from it, but definitely will use it. And I don't think that he would even run away from certain platforms. You know how he reached out to the sinners. He reached out to people that ordinarily the Pharisees would consider them to be, bad people and all that. He was able to reach out to them. right? So I believe strongly that it would really be disruptive to the enemy's agenda
Yeah.
on certain platforms.
Yeah.
Because he know the right words to use, filled with wisdom and full of wisdom.
Yeah.
He knows how to approach different situations. And I believe that is why we have to get closer to him, so that he will fill us with his wisdom to navigate certain terrains, right?
Yeah.
Depending on which platform you find yourself, it will help us his wisdom will be our light to guide us in how we are going to communicate and how we are going to respond to certain things. You understand? Because sometimes how you respond, depending on the environment or the digital platform, could even cause people to not listen to us at all.
Yeah.
So definitely he would use it, but like you said, with intentionality and also have a balance. What boundaries have you established in your digital life that have, strengthened your relationship with people and also with God?
I think I would say that for me, boundaries to strengthen my relationship with God would be definitely if there's a time that I have that I need to spend with God, I would like put my phone on do not disturb. Or I'm not the kind of person to like text people and be like, or if somebody's texting me, it's like, I'm not that kind of person to say, I'm spending time, I'm reading my Bible right now, so I won't do that, but maybe I would just go off the grid. Like I put my phone on silence, and then people already know me for like responding very, very, very late. So I guess they'll be used to it or whatever. But for strengthening my relationship with God, I would definitely say I try to put, one of the boundaries that I've set for myself would be putting my phone on do not disturb, especially at a time that I know that, okay, I'm going to read my Bible, I'm going to spend time in prayer and things like that. Try to put it on do not disturb so that I'm not distracted by anything else. But when it comes to relationship with people, honestly, I don't really have boundaries. But if I was to have boundaries, I would say not going too late in communicating with people, like into the night and things like that. Because maybe, especially if it's like a work week or something, where I have to wake up the next day and get ready for work and things like that, setting a time where, okay, I have to put my phone down and just get some sleep, get some rest and things like that. I guess those would be the boundaries that
Do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I think one boundary I've set for my digital life is my parents have this rule that when we go out to eat, right, when we go to restaurants, you don't use your phone at the at the table.
That's a good one.
And I think that's a really great rule that I've really grown up with. So even it doesn't even have to be at a restaurant. Sometimes when we're eating family dinner at the table, you don't use your phone at the table, right? And I think that's really a great rule because it allows us to become more connected, right? It allows us to fellowship one-on-one with one another and get to know each other on a deeper level. And I really think that it's a rule that I'm definitely going to take with me into the future because it's really important. It allows you to really connect with people one-on-one, face-to-face.
Be present in the moment, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, William, apart from the example that you gave, right, how do you think parents can model a healthy digital practices that their kids can learn from?
That's a great question. I think that in regards to making smart digital choices and digital behavior, kids pay a lot more attention to what you do, what their parents do, rather than what their parents say. And I think that, for example, if my mom says, or I won't use my mom because
you don't want to get into trouble.
if someone says, actually, I'll use my mom. It's okay. If my mom says, Kwame, bring me your phone, put your phone down, and you have to do some work for me. I need you to do something for me. Or if she says, because my mom calls me Kwame Willie. So, Kwame, if you have to do something, or if you have to, if I need you to do something, I want you to put your phone away and do it for me. And then, like, let's say she tells me to go wash the dishes, and I'm going to go do that. And then I see she's also scrolling on WhatsApp. I'll be like, but I was doing the same thing. And then you've asked me to go in and do that, right? Or, for example, if she tells me to put my phone away, right? But she also is on her phone, right? There'll be like that disconnect, right? Where I'm like, well, you've told me to do this thing, right? You've told me to put my phone away, but you're also doing that, right? Not to say that my mom does that, right? My mom doesn't do that, but
just as an example.
Just an example. There, like I said, there'd be that disconnect. So kids pay more attention to what their parents do. Well, they pay more attention to what their parents do rather than what their parents say, right? Because we say all the time, actions speak louder than words. And so I think if they're able to model that behavior of do as I'm doing, not as I've said, right? And not to say that we shouldn't listen to our parents' instructions. We should listen to what they say, right? But also, if they're able to both tell us something and then model that same behavior, it'll allow for the kids to grow in a much more focused aspect, I would say, a much more focused way, I would say.
What's one digital habit you would like to change after this conversation?
Stop watching Netflix, like in doing literally everything. You know, one of my brothers is like, so must you always be watching Netflix if you're like washing the dishes or like just anything, right? That's one thing I've realized, right? I've trained myself to like not be able, even if it's cleaning my room or anything, like I have to have like to be watching a movie or a TV show or YouTube or something in order to get me to be able to do that, right? I think if there's a habit that I need to get out of, it would definitely be that, because one thing I've realized is that it makes you lazy in getting things done, right? It's like if you're not watching something, then you can't clean your room. If you're not watching this, then you can't cook. If you're not watching this, then you can't do the dishes, right? It's always something has to be playing in order for you to be able to get things done, right? Or motivate you. So for me, that's definitely a habit that I would like to get out of. It's hard. It's really hard because sometimes you just want to, especially if the show has a lot of seasons, and you just want to get through it. And you know, they're so great at making the next episode. It's like
they leave you on a cliffhanger.
My goodness. Oh my goodness. And you're like, oh, I have to continue what, you know what? I feel like even the digital platforms or the shows that are even coming out, they don't even help us in any way, because it's like you were saying, like the cliffhangers. They make you feel like, oh, okay, I have to, one more episode. It's always one more episode.
And then the episode ends up being...
Exactly. So for me, definitely, it would definitely be if there's a habit that I would like to break out of, it will definitely be that. Like not being able to be productive without having to be reliant on shows and things like that.
I like your sincerity. How about yourself, William?
One thing I would say is not ending my nights on scrolling, but ending like by reading the word, right? I think that if I'm able to not be ending my nights watching like a YouTube video on like, because one thing about me, I watch a lot of nature documentaries, right? I like watching documentaries, but sometimes those documentaries are so interesting that like I end up falling asleep to them. I don't even get time to end off my night with God, right? And I think that's something that I have to start to cultivate. Just not ending my nights like scrolling or ending my nights with technology, but ending with God.
What's the most toxic digital relationship habit you've noticed in your generation?
There's one thing that I don't like that when it happens, but when people use like social media to like, I'm trying to think of how to word it, where it's like people use social media to, I guess, kind of test your loyalty, right? Like, so
that is a good one.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
like,
You just struck a nerve.
yeah, that thing, like, I know,
That's really a good one.
like, so for
So,
example,
no, wait. What do you mean by use social media to test your loyalty?
so like, for example, you'll be, let's say you're talking to someone, right? And then let's say you have to go and do something, and then you go off for a little bit, and then that person will, like, for example, they'll go out and, like, you know how there's some social media platforms where you have, like, you put like notes and stuff like that, or like bio or whatever, or not bio, like status update or something, and then they'll go and, like, they'll put like a very, like, cryptic message. You're trying to figure out what it means, and then you end up realizing that it's relating to you, but they haven't specifically said it's about you.
Yeah.
That thing, I don't like when people do that, but all I can do is just pray for them. So
All right, that's a good one, and thank you for sharing that. How about yourself? Any toxic digital habit you've noticed in your generation?
So for me, I would say one thing about this generation and social media, I don't know if it's toxic, but I would say literally putting our entire life
out on social
media. Like, I feel like even when things go wrong in a person's life, your audience is like, they feel like they're entitled for you to come and give an update as to, because you've constantly, and I guess people would say this is like with celebrities, but even I guess people like my age that I've known and things that have become like influencers and things like that, because a lot of them put a lot of their lives out in the world so much, immediately something bad happens to them or something negative, people who watch them feel entitled to their entire life. Like feeling like you need to come back and come and explain yourself, or come back and come and give us a reason why this happened and this and this and that. For me, I've never understood it. I feel like why do you feel like you need to be so like we feel like we are so engrossed in this person's life that we need to be in part A, part B, part C of their lives. I've never understood it. I feel like I think it's a little weird that you would feel like you are entitled just because they're showing you some aspect of your life. I guess people will say, well, because you decide to show, you have to show every aspect of it. But I feel like for the people who are watching, especially as like the audience, we need to extend some grace onto these people. Like, it's not always feeling like you have to know every inch of their lives.
Yeah, that's great. I just like your sincerity. There are so many things that come to mind personally. I think I've noticed a trend where people really put everything out there.
Yeah.
Everything, literally, especially, like somebody finds a new guy and then it's all over social media, engagement, proposal, and everything is all over. And they get into the marriage and you're struggling and you don't see them post. And they disappear on social media. All of a sudden, and also the trend where people show only good things is like, sometimes just to create that impression
that life is good
and all that, and they struggle inside, they don't let anybody know, and they, cover that. Sometimes it unnecessary pressure on others. So I think there's some level of we need to measure what we put out there. It's important. You can also just put everything and anything out there. So that's also one.
You know what's the interesting thing about the people who put a lot of their lives out to the world on social media? One thing I've realized is that when something changes in their life, or particularly for the people who get married, right? It's like all of a sudden they stop posting. And one thing I've noticed is that when people start to go into that, it's always they're pregnant or they're going through something in life. I feel like when you get into the habit of always putting every inch of your life out there and you stop for a second, you give room for people to know what is happening next in your life, especially when you move into a new phase in your life. And the reason why I'm saying that for the people who get married is because for me personally, I've seen a lot of the times, that's not to say I'm stalking or anything, but it's like
That's a Gen Z thing.
it's not about stalking,
about
but like, you know,
stalking.
on your timeline when
Yeah.
you know that this person always posts, but all of a sudden they're
There's a
married,
gap.
there's a gap, they're not posting. And so like immediately it's like, okay, they're either going through something or they're pregnant. And so it leaves room for people to know what your next step in life is, right? Even if you want to keep it private, it's no longer private.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think like to your point, it's definitely something that we need to check. Like always feeling like the need to put every inch of your life out on social media.
And I think also on the flip side of that, when, like, let's say there's someone who's always posting their lives, right? And then they stop posting for a second. That also gives people out in the world to kind of formulate their own assumptions about what's going on in your life, right? So, and then before you know it, you have a bunch of circulating rumors that aren't even true.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. So, final words to our viewers.
I think the most important thing is to live in the moment, right? And be able to really take every day one step at a time. There's this one quote that I really like from Minister Dunson. One thing he said that really struck me. I was listening to one of his worship sessions. He said, "Don't capture the moment and miss your moment." And what that meant to me was, you shouldn't be so engrossed in every day posting and doing all of that stuff and checking social media every single day that you're missing out on the little moments that really matter in life, the intimate times with your family and with close relationships and the people that matter, and also with God. And so being able to be present and live in the moment is one of the most important things to me.
That's a good one. Amikrama.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And you know, sometimes what gets me with what William was saying about living in the moment is like when sometimes people go for these concerts or worship nights and things like that, and you say you're going for an experience, and literally you're like just filming. Like, what experience are you getting from God? What are you going to, you know what I mean?
And that's what Minister Dunson was referring to, where he said, don't capture the moment and miss your moment.
Exactly.
Because you can get so caught up in trying to film that experience. Oh, wow, that was a great concert. The music was amazing.
Or just to show that you've gone to see
it. That you miss what God had in store for you in that moment.
Anyways, for me, what I would say is in this time and age, it's so easy for us to be so reliant on our digital devices, on social media and things like that. But you shouldn't let that be the thing that dictates how your day goes or dictates your drive in doing things, right? Like I said, for me, one of the habits that I hope to break is always having to feel motivated only when like I'm watching a show or watching YouTube and things like that. And so don't let these social media things be like a sense of drive for you, right? It's hard, I know. Like sometimes I'm not saying that even for me, I still have my struggles, but at least like try to make God be the center of whatever you're doing in your life. For anybody who's struggling with social media or like their digital life, or feeling like they're living like a double life, like in reality and on social media, I'll definitely say like sit back and like assess yourself and figure out what exactly you want out of life, what you want, like what purpose are you looking for, right? In this life. It's so easy to, especially in the social media world, it's so easy to live the lives of other people because of what we always see, right? And so you're not necessarily living your true you're not living the life that you were meant to live, right, on earth. And so if you're that kind of person that is struggling with that, definitely like talk to somebody that you trust, but also try to sit with yourself and try to reassess like where you're going in life and how much social media or our phones or whatever, how much of that has a hold on you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, William. I appreciate you showing up, and you guys have shared great
Yeah, this
nuggets
was
and pieces of advice that I believe when we all put into action is going to really help us set those boundaries that will help us, build great relationship with people and our maker. And Mami Kroma, thank you. I really appreciate your time. To you out there, I want to hear from you. I want to know what boundaries you have put in place successfully such that your digital life is not really cluttered with so much noise and it has enhanced your relationship with people and God. Let me hear from you. Our Gen Zs have shared their thoughts and I want to hear from you too. Thank you so much for staying up to this time with us. Until we meet again, hear the sermon and live it out.
I just want to give the sermon. I can't put none of it to work.